Welcome back. I appreciate y'all stopping by. Man, I ain't gonna tell y'all no lie. I almost didn't want to do this. We'll see how it goes. So you see the title there, Return of the Kingdom, man, the Lion of Judah. We coming back, guys. We coming back. The world is changing. You can see it every day. There's definitely a rumbling that everyone can feel. And nobody can quite put their hands on or, put their senses to what they're seeing right now. There's some out there, obviously, who knows what's going on. But for a lot of us out here, we're kind of lost right now. So we're not going to get into a whole lot of that. Just want to kind of put that out there. Today, we're going to be kind of talking more about the dynamic between Jacob and Esau. As many of you know, these days, there's been a lot of talk about the children of Israel or Israel just in general. But typically we never get into the aspect of Jacob's brother or Israel's brother. Matter of fact, you don't even hear the word Jacob, as often as you should. When you're hearing about promises, you hear about the promises of Abraham, but they never take it to the point where, what are Israel's promises? What are Jacob's promises? Jacob's brother, what role does he play in this dynamic, this world altering dynamic? All right. What you're going to see is that this world, it's a struggle between two brothers, to be quite honest with you. Okay. This is a spiritual struggle. All right. That has been ordained by God, whether you understand that or not. That's what's going on. All right. So as I always say, hey, forgive, guys. That's the key thing that's going to get us through this. Our true belief in God, okay, which is the truth, and pure forgiveness. You must forgive your brother. The other side wants you to hate. He wants you to hate your brother. He wants you to be upset that he did this or he did that. Okay. They want the men and women up against each other. That's what fuels their God. But our God is a God of love, truth, and forgiveness and mercy. And I know those words might sound strange in today's climate. I know they do, because we don't hear that all the time. It sounds corny. It sounds like it's not going to work. Well, that's what they want you to think. All right. So if there's only one thing that you get out of this is that you love and that I need you to forgive. All right. That's the key. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get to it. Like I said, I don't know how this is going to go. I put this quick slideshow together to kind of just highlight from what I see, what the difference is between Jacob and Esau. All right. Now I do have one slide that has a little bit of reading, a little bit more reading than the next, but I'm going to be using different ways to kind of highlight these differences of these two brothers and what that would look like in today's atmosphere. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started here. All right. So yeah, the primary truth, the different natures of Jacob, which is Israel, and Esau, which is Edom. All right. And I had a little AI generation of this flag. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a flag, not necessarily like this, but something like this though, with diamonds and emeralds. All right. We don't have this kind of stuff. Look at that dove sitting in the middle. All right. Let me know what y'all think about that. I like that. All right. So here's what's going on now, right? The lion has been effectively silenced in the world, guys. Muted through technology, muted through education, muted through the Smithsonian, muted. The lion is muted. And as long as the lion stays muted, the other side has the advantage. The most terrifying sound to the other side is the lion's roar. So they do everything they can to control that voice, whether it be through a contract, whether it be through the music that they push, whether it be through the things that we are taught through these education systems that are basically lies. Okay. And that's going to play a key role in what I'm talking about here. And you're going to see how that kind of plays out. All right. But eventually the lion will bust free. Okay. Now, to many, this might be a terrifying looking image. but it's not. Okay, they're going to make you afraid of the lion's roar. They're going to tell you, disregard that lion. Disregard him. He's a wild beast. He will tear you apart. But in all actuality, the lion is coming to bring peace and love. All right. And this will be the end result. The kingdom, peace, a new way of living, the right way of living. All right. So let's get into Jacob and Esau. All right. So many of us know the story of, or I don't say we know the story, but a lot of us have heard of Noah and Noah's 3 sons and Abraham. But I found this chart I kind of threw up on the screen here to kind of give you a visual of what's going on here. All right, so we all heard of Abraham, right? Father Abraham had many sons. All right, so Abraham, this is where the term Shemitic comes from to a certain degree. Okay, Abraham is from the line of Shem. All right, so when they're talking about things like anti-Semitic or who are the Semitic people or the children of Abraham are promised this incorporates a lot of people. Okay, I think it's purposely deceitful the way they frame the conversation in general when they speak about Abraham's seed, because Abraham had many children, as you can see here. Ishmael by Hagar was Abraham's, technically the first child that Abraham had, but he wasn't the promised seed. If you recall the story in Genesis, Abraham married to Sarah, they couldn't get pregnant. Okay, so out of their own flesh, out of their own will, they said, hey, let's get the handmaid here, Hagar, and see if she wants to be your, I don't want to call it a concubine, but you can have a baby with her, like a, what do they call that? It's a surrogate, basically. So they did that and had Ishmael. And Ishmael is the father of what you would call maybe the Saudi type of Arabs today. Saudi Arabia, UAE, the Kuwaitis, those Saudis. Not necessarily the Palestinians, not necessarily those in Lebanon, particularly those Arab nations, those Gulf states that have the quote unquote oil. Okay. Now you got to keep in mind, Ishmael was born first, but eventually Abraham and Sarah did conceive and they had Isaac, and Isaac was the child of the promise, guys. All right. And then from Isaac by Rebekah was born Jacob and Esau. And we're going to focus in on these two today and their relationship today. Okay. Jacob and Esau. Now, as you can see here, by the boldness of Jacob here, he was the child of the promise, not Esau. Even though Esau was born first, as we'll see here shortly. Esau was the firstborn. They were twins. And Esau was born first. So if you look at it from just a carnal level, Esau and Ishmael have something in common. They were both born first, technically, okay, by the flesh, but they both had to concede the firstborn, Ishmael to Isaac and Esau to Jacob. And this created a bit of resentment, for lack of better words, between Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and Esau. All right, I hope that makes sense. All right, let me check my volume real quick. 1 second. Esau to Jacob. And this created a bit of resentment. All right, we are doing good. All right, so as you can see, also Abraham had children after Sarah passed. He had children by another woman named Keturah. And they had several children. All right. So all these people technically would be considered Shemites or Semites today, not just Jacob. Okay. The term Semite is deceptive if you don't have the full understanding or the full truth on who's who. It could be very deceptive. All right. And if you jump in here, feel free to throw in a comment. You can ask your questions. I don't profess to be a quote unquote teacher. I'm just here to kind of give what I see, you know, and I do pray to God that he blesses my breath so that I'm not saying anything that's that would lead my people or lead his people astray. I do pray for that. Okay. So if you have a question or a comment you want to add to the conversation, please feel free to do that. Okay. All right. So here's the family tree here. Abraham, and we're going to stick with the promised seed now. Abraham and Sarah had Isaac. Isaac and Rebekah had Jacob and Esau. And we're going to talk about Jacob and Esau. All right, so here we go here. And it's kind of going back right here. I want to add this in here real quick, just to kind of give you an understanding. This is before Abraham's time, obviously. But Japheth, okay. My understanding, Japheth is what we would commonly call the European nations today. Okay. The Anglos, the Germanic tribes, even up into Asia, like the Russians, and some would say even the Chinese, maybe Japheth. Okay. But typically into Europe and into Asia is Japheth. They have very fair skin. Okay. Ham will be the father of what you would consider today the dark races, such as the African tribes, the Egyptians, the Cushites, Puts, the Libyans. Okay. And then Shem, the best way I can describe Shem is he's kind of in the middle. Okay. He's kind of in the middle there. And this is going to play an important role in what we see today. This is why I put this slide in here, because what you're going to see here is how Japheth, Ham, and Shem play a role in how Jacob and Esau are perceived in the world today. Okay. You're going to see that Japheth and Ham play a very significant role in how Esau and Jacob are perceived today. I want you to really understand that. Okay. So as you can see, Japheth was predominantly given the lands and migrated and situated, and his people were given, like I said, Europe, up and through Asia. Okay. And this is not exact. This is just giving you an idea of what type of people we're talking about here. Okay. And as I mentioned before, Ham predominantly was given Africa. Okay. All the dark races. All right. All right. Let's get into the story of Jacob and Esau. So we're going to go right to the Bible here. We're going to be in Genesis 25 and 19. I typically use the King James version of the Bible. Let me hide myself from the screen here so you all can see and read along with me. So I'll hide myself for a moment here. Boom. Okay. So we're going to go right to the story right here. Isaac's sons, starting at Genesis 25 and 19. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac, like we saw earlier. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, the sister to Laban the Syrian. All right. Now, this is interesting. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. So just like you would see today, maybe a couple's been married for a few years and, the woman's not getting pregnant. So Isaac went to the Lord. He prayed, hey, Lord, God, I'm a humble servant. Please grant me this. And the Lord did it. All right. So she conceived, and the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. So she was having a rough pregnancy. Her stomach, her belly, her womb was in turmoil. Okay, maybe she was, how women sometimes they had that morning sickness and whatnot. She was having a pretty rough pregnancy, and she was saying, if this is a blessing, Lord, why is it like this? All right, and here's the answer she got back from the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So this is a very key verse in understanding the early dynamic between what eventually will become Jacob and Esau. Even in the womb, they were struggling with each other. And keep in mind here, I want you to pay attention to closely where it says two nations. Okay? Nations is synonymous with the word people. You could say two peoples. Two nations were in thy womb, are in thy womb. These are different people, are in your one womb. Two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Very, very, very key point there, guys. Don't forget, two nations are in her womb. All right. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, just like the Lord told her, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. So Esau, represented here by the man on the left, was born first. Okay. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. All right. Another key part of this scripture here, it says that Jacob took hold on Esau's heel. That's not insignificant. That's prophecy within itself there. The fact that Jacob is holding Esau's heel is mentioned several times in the scriptures, especially when you look into the books like the Apocrypha and whatnot, which I do have one here, and I'll show you real quick on camera. It means something. Those things mean something. All right. This book here, a lot of that, there's a couple of verses, or at least one verse I know for sure that speaks to that particular, speaks to what that means. Okay. All right. Now, I want you to pay attention to Genesis 25 and 25. And the first came out red. Now, that word red has a lot of different meanings. The Bible is not written like your textbook, your McGraw-Hills. They want to just kind of tell you something and make you understand it that way. The Bible is written, it's going to sound funny when I say this. It's almost written like rap lyrics to a certain degree. All right. Things have double meanings. There's double entendres in there. These are very spiritual people that we're talking about. So when they say Esau came out red all over like a hairy garment, yeah, he may have been hairy, but that word hairy has other meanings. That word red has other meanings than just his skin color. But notice how they don't mention what Jacob looked like. They don't mention Jacob's appearance in this verse here. They only mention Esau. All right. So common sense tells me that Esau looked different than his mom and dad to a certain degree. He was fair skinned. I can take that away from him. He was fair skinned, and Jacob wasn't. Okay. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead and get into it right now. Here's the part that people might not be able to understand right now, and that's fine. And I want to go back to what I was saying earlier. All right. What you're going to see as you read the scriptures, if you study, what's in the Bible, you study history and who Esau is and who he's typically paired up with in most situations and where he does his most damage, is because Esau had the ability to blend in, I would say. That's the word I want to use. Blend in, mesh. I don't want to use the word hide. Okay. But he resembled more of the Japhetic tribes. Okay. When Esau tended to go places or get in trouble or try to hide or settle, he typically settled in Japhetic territories in Europe, Asia, and whatnot. Okay. And the reverse is true for Jacob. Okay. There's examples of this. Jacob tended, or the children of Israel, a lot of times they were described as Egyptians or Hamites. For example, Moses, and I think I have an example and I'll pull that up later. Moses was confused as an Egyptian. Keep in mind, when Jesus Christ Right before his birth, the angel of the Lord came to Joseph, his father, and said, hey, take the child and his mother and go into Egypt until Herod's wrath be gone, basically. Okay, so the Israelites always tended to dwell amongst the Hamites because they could blend in, especially when trouble was afoot. Okay, and the scriptures will bear this out. If you read the scriptures and pay attention, it bears it out. All right. And what I'm saying, I know it's true, because that's why we have so much confusion today where people are saying, oh, the Jewish people are European and this and that and the other. Listen, man, they dwelt in Europe the same way Israel dwelt in the land of Ham. That was one of the main differences between these two brothers. Okay. Now, as far as their differences, I want to kind of jump outside of the scriptures and kind of show you from a what this would look like in God's creation. Okay. In God's creation, Esau would be represented by this red portion of the rainbow here. He's the red portion. Okay. Now you can argue that, Japheth would be the yellow, Ham would be the green. All right. And Jacob will be represented by this violet, purple, you can call it violet, inner portion of the bow. Okay. And there's a spiritual understanding with this. Okay. That we'll talk about a little bit. If you notice, the red bow, it's going to be typically straighter. Okay. Even though they're both curved, the red bow is longer and bigger in the outside. So therefore it's going to be somewhat straighter. So it doesn't bend to light as much as the violet bow does. And what does light represent? Truth, God. Let there be light. The light is the truth. All right. So for the sake of this argument, these two brothers would be compared to the inner ring or the inner bow being violet, representing Jacob, and the outside representing Esau. Okay. Jacob responds to the light. He bends. He moves with the light way more. He accepts it. Esau doesn't. And you'll see that here shortly. And I kind of want to get into this light thing because I think it's very interesting with, the idea of light. All right. If you look at red, right, infrared is like the light just beyond the red side, for for a lack of better terms. Okay. Once you can't see that red anymore, it turns into what we call infrared. Okay. And check out what they say about infrared. Infrared photography captures light invisible to the human eye, creating surreal, dreamlike images where foliage appears white and skies turn dark. Isn't that interesting? The red does that. It bends less to the light, and I consider the light to be the truth. It bends less to the light. It doesn't regard the light as much as that violet ray does. All right. Infrared light lies immediately beyond the red edge, like I said, of the visible spectrum, acting as a lower frequency. So it has a lower frequency, a longer wavelength, continuation of red light. Okay, infrared is invisible. It's felt as heat. You feel it as heat. All right, and it penetrates deeper. Okay. As opposed to ultraviolet. It captures light from the invisible UV spectrum. So like I said before here, infrared would be maybe out here where you can't see it anymore. And then the ultraviolet would be the portion where you can't see the blue anymore. Just that portion just outside of that. All right. And I'm using this as an example to show the two different dynamics of these brothers. I'm trying to give you another way of looking at it, of just how different they were. Okay. So it reveals, now check it out. This is interesting about ultraviolet light. Very interesting. Pay attention to this part right here. I'm gonna start from the beginning again. UV photography captures light from the invisible UV spectrum. It reveals hidden details such as flooring patterns that attract bees, skin damage, or forensic evidence. So if you want to find some forensic evidence to convict someone, you're going to come in with the UV light to see that person try to clean up, stains and whatnot that may have happened at the crime of the scene. Okay. As opposed to what we read about red, it gives false images, dreamlike stuff, surreal, dreamlike images where foliage appears white. It doesn't even give you the correct color of the foliage. It's almost a lie. The red light is a lie within itself. But the blue light reveals deeper things that you can't see with the naked eye. It's more of a spiritual light. Okay? And it bends more to light, like I said. It bends more to light, which means it responds to the truth better. And here's just an example of what infrared would look like. All right. So infrared would represent Esau. The ultraviolet would represent Jacob. Okay. Two manner of people shall be separated from thou bowels. Okay. Jacob sees like this. Esau sees the world like this. Jacob sees the world like this to the top right. Esau sees the world like the bottom left. All right. So let's move on in the story here. So moving on, crucial part here. All right. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. So as you can see, early on in the story between these two brothers, Esau received his name, or his new name, right away. He's Edom. Okay. Now keep in mind, look at the characteristic of Esau. There's a lot in here that we can get into, but Esau's coming from the field and he was faint. He's out doing stuff. He's out getting into stuff. All right. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. Now watch this. And Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do me? Okay. I'm going to die. I don't have faith that I'm going to live. I'm going to die. Yeah. That sounds like a good deal. And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now y'all have to understand, that's the nature of Esau right there. That's a very good way of characterizing his nature. Esau did not value the spiritual things. He only valued what he could hold, touch, feel, what he can have right now. Jacob understood the value of the spiritual blessing of being born first. Because who determines that in the womb especially? Who determines who comes out first? Who determines the firstborn? That's of God. That's a gift from God to be firstborn. Esau had no regard for that. He wanted the bowl of pottage. He sold his firstborn birthright for a bowl of soup. Do y'all understand how disrespectful that is? Do you understand how much of an affront to God that would be? For a bowl of soup. Now, how did Jacob know? How did Jacob know that? How did Jacob know that Esau would sell his birthright for just some soup? I mean, Jacob could have asked for almost anything there. He could have said, hey, man, give me your shirt. Let me get that gold chain. Let me get the car keys. Let me get this. Let me get that for, for this soup. But Jacob knew that Esau did not value the things of God. He valued the things of man. Because Jacob had UV vision. Okay? Jacob had that UV vision. UV is essentially purpler than purple, light that human eyes cannot detect, often causing fluorescence. He could see the soul and the spirit of Esau. And he knew that he didn't value the things of God. So he asked for the birthright. He knew Esau would sell that birthright. He knew. If Jacob would have said, let me get your bow, let me get your quiver, let me get, your car keys, Esau would have said, hell no, I'm not giving you a car for, a bowl of soup. I'm not giving you a car. Because Esau could touch the car, feel the car, drive in the car. He was very carnal minded, fleshly minded. But Jacob knew that Esau would sell something spiritual, guys. He saw it. He knew his brother from the womb. And who knows what was going on in the womb? When it says they struggled together within her, who knows what was going on in there? So Jacob knew this man. Okay? Jacob knew this man. And this is a very spiritual moment here, guys. To sell your whole birthright that God ordained. God ordains who comes out first. And you sell it for a bowl of soup. I got to keep harping on that. That's such an affront to God. It's so disrespectful. Now, we can look at Esau as the bad guy or the good guy, however you want to frame it, but you got to look at yourself and in your life. Are we doing things like that? Have we done things like that? Have we thrown away the things of God for whatever it may be? The things of God hold more value than anything man can create. And Jacob knew that. And Esau didn't. Esau didn't care. Okay? Esau did not care, guys. You got a question? Go ahead and throw it in the chat there. This is a very spiritual moment here. He sold his birthright for a bowl of Campbell's soup. That's why it says here in Genesis 25:34 that Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat it, and he drank, and he rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. What an affront to God. All right. So we're going to move on here. I talked about this during my last live, so I'm going to read. This is going to be probably the most reading that I do here. But I do want to talk about the blessing, because a lot of people look at what's going on in the world today and they'll confuse things. They'll think because one people is up or what this world would consider doing well as some type of quote unquote blessing from God. When you look at the scriptures and look at the blessing that Esau received and the blessing that Jacob received, they both would have certain characteristics that to the average eye, to the infrared way of looking at things, like I mentioned earlier, would not see a difference. But if you had that ultralight vision, that UV vision that God ordained to Jacob and his seed, you can see that they are not the same. The blessings are not the same. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, we're at Genesis 27:1, if you're following along in your Bible. And it came to pass that when Isaac was old, his eyes were dim so that he could not see. He called Esau, his eldest son, and said unto him, my son. And he said unto him, behold, here I am. And he said, behold, now I am old. I know not the day of my death. Now therefore, take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver and thy bow, and go out to the field and take me some venison. So Isaac's getting older. Okay. Hold on, let me stop real quick. I got a chat. I like to read my chats. Hold on real quick. Let me see what Brother Moses is saying. Yeah, I did. The sun brings light, brother. And the light is the truth. Light represents truth, represents the truth of God. So you can see the correct way to go. And I mentioned earlier that that red portion of the spectrum here, and I'll go back to it for you, bro. This red spectrum right here, when you look at the characteristics of this red outer ring here, it bends less to light. It bends less to light, which represents the truth. It bends less because it's a longer bow. As opposed to UV rays, it's much more of a bend in this violet area here. There's more of a bend because it respects the truth more. Just by its nature, it respects the light more. That's how I see that. Okay. And also, we're going to get into the Bible where it shows you how Esau, and I'll get to that scripture too. It's in Malachi 1:4. I'm going to make sure I get to that scripture, but I'll go ahead and kind of give you a sneak peek now. It tells you in the in Malachi chapter 1 that Esau is the border of wickedness. He's the border of wickedness. It doesn't get any, you can't go past Esau as far as wickedness goes. He's the border of wickedness. Okay. And then it tells you also that Jacob or Israel are the bounds of the people. They set the bounds. And if you notice, people will look at this blue line and say, oh, it's at the bottom. No, it's the foundation that everything's supposed to live off of. All the people are supposed to live off the foundation of Jacob's righteousness. That's why it's at the bottom. That's the special role Jacob plays in the world. All right. It's all in the rainbow. The truth is in the rainbow. Ain't that crazy? Ain't that amazing? All right. Okay. So we're going to go back to here. So yeah, as we talked about earlier, Isaac is getting old. And see, Isaac right now would be a representation of the current world. Okay. And I say that because look, it says when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see. Don't we have that problem right now in the world? No one knows what really happened in the past. In this world, it seems like it's getting old. This way of life, this current civilization that we're in, it feels like it's about to die. Okay. It feels like it's about to die. And its eyes are dim. We're trying to look back in the past and say, who's who? Who's this? Who's that? What happened? What really happened during World War II? What really happened during the Renaissance period? What were these dark ages really about? Our eyes are dim. So to a certain degree, Isaac represents the world. Okay. So here we go. We're going to skip down to Genesis 27:4. So like I said, he called Esau and said, I'm about to die. Take your quiver and your bow and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat and that my soul may bless thee before I die. Very important part here. I'm gonna go back to this. And Rebekah, remember Rebekah, that's Jacob and Esau's mother. She heard when Isaac spake to Esau, his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying. Now I want to stop here before I go too far. Look, like I said, in this scenario right here, Isaac represents the world, and the world's about to die. So before the world dies, it's saying, man, what are we going to do to fix this? We need to be blessed. Okay, we need to be blessed. So in essence right now, who's the world looking at right now to fix this? They're looking for the chosen people of God, right? Who the world knows as the chosen people, who we've been taught are the chosen people. And the world is saying, Netanyahu, Ben Shapiro, Bring me some savory meat so our souls may be blessed. Bring me this. That's what the world's saying right now. But in this story, Rebekah heard Isaac speaking to her son Esau. And she went to Jacob and said this. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob, saying, Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat, and bless thee before thee, Lord, bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. So Rebekah saying, listen, I heard your father speaking to Esau, but I want you to do this instead. Okay? And this is what she says. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. All right. So Rebekah, remember, if you look back in the story, Rebekah already knew what was up, because y'all know how black women are. When they pregnant, right, and they feel the baby moving a certain way, and maybe grandmama come around, or maybe she'll say, ooh, this one right here gonna be nice and calm when he get older, or this feel like a boy, or you know how black women are when they talk about when they pregnant, how they talk. I remember when my wife was pregnant with our twins, there was this thing she did. She took the wedding ring and put it on a string to see if it was going to be a boy or a girl. Y'all know how black women are. Okay, so she already knew that the older is going to serve the younger. She already knew. She already had that in her. All right, so that's what that kind of means there. All right. So Rebekah said, hey, I heard your dad. I want you to go get me some goats and all that, and I'm going to make this food for your dad. All right. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. So she's saying, listen, you're going to go get this blessing. Okay. Now remember, don't y'all ever forget, Esau sold his blessing. Okay. And there's nothing here in this story that says that Rebekah knew that. We have to assume, unless it's somewhere else that I don't know about, that Rebekah does not know that Esau sold his birthright. Jacob knows. Esau knows he sold it. So here we go. Jacob said to his mother, Rebekah, behold, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, and not a blessing. And his mother said unto him, upon me be thy curse, my son. Only obey my voice and go fetch them for me. So basically he's saying, we don't feel the same. Me and my brother are totally different people. If I go in there trying to say that I'm Esau, the firstborn, my dad's going to see that and he's going to curse me, yo. You know what I'm saying? And Rebekah said, don't worry about it. If something comes up, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that. All right. This is so spiritual right now because you have Black Americans such as myself. I know that we come from Jacob. Okay. And we're basically telling the world that we're Esau. We're saying we're the Jew. And no one's believing us. In our mind, we're thinking they're going to think that we're trying to deceive them. I want you to understand how deep this is, that Jacob has to basically do certain things to get this blessing. He has to go confront his father in a certain kind of way where he may be perceived as a liar. The same way a guy like me will be perceived as a liar if I say, Black Americans are Judah. Black Americans are Jews. Black Americans are Israel. People perceive that as a lie. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Like I said, we're going to go back a little bit. And his mother said unto him, upon me be thy curse, my son. So she's telling him, if your father catches wind, I'll take the hit for it. Just do what your mama tell you, boy. You know how black women say, boy, just do what your mama say. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother. Okay. And his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were in the house, and put them upon Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and upon the smooth of his neck. So after she skinned the goats and got the meat and everything ready, she put the skins of the goats on Jacob so that it would feel like Esau, which is another point I'm going to make to y'all here in a minute about that and what that means spiritually and how that applies to today. Okay. And she gave the savory meat and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. And he came unto his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who art thou, my son? All right. So now Jacob's in the house. I mean, he's in there with his father, ready to get it done. Now, keep in mind, though, Jacob had to wear goat skin, okay, to feel like Esau. Meaning spiritually that Jacob was covered in what Esau painted him out to be. For example, here, I'll bring it to modern day time so that I can get straight to the point with it. This identity that we have today called Black Americans, or Black, Negro, colored, whatever the case may be, that's not my skin. I didn't create that origin story for us or for myself, or none of us did. We didn't create that origin story. Someone told us that. Someone gave us that covering that you're Black. You're only a slave. Vote Democrat. Here's the music you're supposed to listen to. Have an abortion. All these things that we're covered with are of our brother Esau. If you understand what I'm trying to tell y'all. They're of our brother Esau. Okay? So just like how Jacob, our father, had to go in and speak to the world or speak to Isaac about what he's here to do, everyone's going to look at us in the way that we were painted by Esau. All right. But there's a difference, though. And I'm going to show you what the difference is here. And here he goes. I'm going to start from Genesis 27 and 18. And he came unto his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, or here am I. Who art thou, my son? That's what Jacob says. And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto his son, how is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Man, how beautiful is that? He said, God brought it to me. Whew. God brought it to me. That's how I found it so fast. How do y'all know that you Judah? How do you know you Israel? God gave it to us. That's how. Because we know we weren't taught that. God brought it to me. And Isaac said unto Jacob, come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Another spiritual moment. Okay. Us here in America, known as Black, we're covered in Esau's skin. We're covered by what the media says about us and how the media painted us, how the textbooks painted us as African Americans and all these other terms that don't make any biblical sense. All these names that God did not give us. We're painted by that. Even our hands are. The work we've done in this land. You know, these jobs we work, everything we put forth to this society have been in the hands of Esau. However, our voice, that's why I went back to here. I want to talk about that. That lion's roar. That lion's roar. So we're going to feel like Esau. But when they hear our voice, it's going to sound just like Jacob. That's why you see this going on in the world. That's why the world has us silenced right now. You don't hear Jacob's voice. They don't want you to hear Jacob's voice. They know because of this thing right here. It was the voice of Jacob. They understand the power, guys. Everything that you've seen in this world, how they set everything up, has been to do one thing. Never, ever, ever, but never let them know who they are. You see it with the cancellation of guys like Nick Cannon and how he got hemmed up. You saw how Kyrie got put in the blender when he posted that link. And you see what they tried to do with Ye. Shut them up. Do not let them hear Jacob's voice. I'm going to give it to y'all straight tonight. I'm not playing with these people, man. They playing games, yo. They got a dang on Planned Parenthood right across the street from the black college down here where I live. I'm not playing with these people no more. Trying to kill us. And I'm not with it. All right, here we go. We're going to start back at Genesis 27 and 22. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy as his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed them. And he said, art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, and he did eat, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelt the smell of his raiment. And he blessed him, and said, see, the smell of my son is the smell of a field which the Lord hath blessed. Okay, so here comes Jacob's blessing right here. It's a beautiful blessing too. And see, people read these blessings and they kind of think nothing of it, man. This is what's happening. This is God, yo. When I say God, don't take it lightly. This is the creator of heaven and earth. This is the blessing that Jacob and his descendants are going to receive from the creators of the heaven and earth. That's a power that you don't play with. Listen to what he told Jacob. Therefore, God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. That's a lot. Now, a lot of people might read that and take that as something we should be arrogant about. I totally disagree. That's a humbling blessing. That's a humbling blessing. Let people serve thee. That sounds harsh when you think about it, but it's not. The blessing he's getting is saying that your light, okay, your way, people are going to follow you. You're given a righteous authority by God to lead in good things, in good ways, show the light of God, bend to the truth. And nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren. Teach your brethren the right way. God put something in you. He put something in us. Be that light to the Gentiles. I don't know how old people are going to be watching this video. If you have an older son, or your firstborn is a son, there's a certain thing that you try to pass on to him, and it means something. It means something. Okay. Now here's one here. This is what explaining what's going on in America right now. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee. America, this Western system, has not done right by Jacob and his seed. And it's going to fall because of that. You go watch any Tucker Carlson, Mike Huckabee interview you want to. You watch these non-Jacobites debate on Piers Morgan about what's going on with Israel and this, that, and the third. And they always want to bring up the blessing Abraham got, but they never go to hear where Jacob got that blessing too, because they know they're not Jacob. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. If you notice, the more the more destruction that has happened to the, quote unquote, black Americans here, America and this West has been falling right along with our fall. (2026), I want you to really let this sink in your head. 2026, and they still call us black, but they can tell me about every other thing else in this world. But no blessing for me, Father? All right. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. If anybody has anything, please feel free to put it in the chat. All right, we're going to keep going. Huge blessing. Humbling blessing. Okay? Humbling blessing. And like Ye said, blacks, black Americans are Judah. We're Jews too. So this is your blessing. So it's your responsibility to not hate and show truth and speak truth at all costs. All right. So we're going to get to Esau. So that's the difference. So that's Jacob. So we see there's a difference right there. That's the first difference right there. That's Jacob. Let's see Esau. Remember, Esau's still out there running around trying to find, trying to scheme somebody and lie, cheat, steal, kill, whatever to get what he got to get to bring to daddy. But Jacob got it from God, like he told his dad. So we're going to start at Genesis 27:30. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac, his father, that Esau, his brother, came in from his hunting. So here comes Esau. As soon as Jacob is leaving, here comes Esau coming in. All right. And he also had made savory meat and brought it unto his father, and said unto his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless thee. Now keep in mind, Esau sold his birthright. Don't ever forget that, y'all. He got what he wanted for his birthright. He got that soup. It's gone now. And Isaac, his father, said unto him, who are you? Who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, who? Where is he that hath taken venison and brought it me? And I have eaten of all before thou camest, and have blessed him. Yeah, and he shall be blessed. So Isaac saying, hey, somebody, who came in here earlier then? Who was that? I blessed him, and he going to be blessed. Isaac's blessings meant something. All right. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried, He cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry, and said unto his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. And he said, thy brother came in subtly, and took your blessing. It's going to happen again. And he said, is not he rightly named Jacob? For he hath supplanted me these 2 times, and took away my birthright. And behold, now he taketh away my blessing. And he said, Hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? Now Esau has some nerve here. Do you see how he's talking to his father? He took away my birthright. You sold it, Esau. Do you understand that he don't take accountability? Do you see how he bends less to the truth? Like I said, he bends less to the truth. You sold your birthright, Esau. And that spirit is still in these people. No accountability. And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, and with corn and wine I sustained him. And what shall I do now unto thee, my son? So Isaac said, listen, I gave your brother this blessing. What do you want? And Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and cried. He's crying. He's crying. Even though he sold his birthright, ladies and gentlemen. Don't y'all ever forget that. And Esau said unto his father, okay, I read that. We're going to Genesis 27 and 39. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. Now listen, I mentioned this on the last stream. I got to go over it one more time. If you're not careful, these two blessings look the same, but they're not. And there's a reason why Esau's blessing, it reads this way. It says, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. When you read Jacob's blessing, he says, therefore God give thee of the dew in heaven and the fatness of the earth. Therefore God give thee. God's giving this to Jacob. It's going to be his, as opposed to, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. Esau will dwell in high places. Okay? Because he has to in order to usurp his brother. We'll talk about that later. Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. I do want to highlight that point, make sure that not that point, but that idea is totally in people's minds. Esau will dwell in the fatness of the earth and of the dew in heaven from above, but Jacob was given it by God. Two different statements, two different blessings, two different understandings. Here's Esau's evil right here. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So what that basically means is that Esau's going to live by the sword. And that sword is a lot of different things. Of course, you look at the physical sword, military and whatnot, but also his way to divide and cut things off. Esau's good at cutting you off from your from understanding. He's good at cutting God out of the equation. He lives by the sword. He doesn't make things whole. He cuts it in half. But it says, and shalt serve thy brother. So at the same time, while you're doing all of that, Esau, whatever you do is going to serve your brother, whether you realize that or not. No matter which way you go, it's going to serve your brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So whenever Esau does have total control, that burden that he's, for a time, that yoke that Jacob has on Esau, he's going to break away from that for a while. So I wanted to kind of highlight that. Those are the two different blessings. Those are the two different natures of people we're dealing with. Okay. I'm going to recap just a little bit. Okay. One of them, Esau, can hide amongst Japheth, your Europeans. He can blend in with them. That's why he was heavily involved with Rome. He's heavily involved with the Western powers today, where he seems to be the head of that. And a lot of black people say, oh, these white people. That's because Esau, he mingles with them. He's able to hide amongst them, guys. The same way Jacob, here on the right, represented by my homie Ye, can blend in with the darker tribes. That's one difference. Their appearance, okay? One doesn't value the things that are spiritual. That's why Esau sold his birthright and gave away his blessing. And one values the spiritual more than he does the physical. Okay? Now let's look at how God kind of speaks to both of these people in a couple different verses in the Bible. All right. We're going to go through a couple verses and then we're going to get out of here. All right. So anybody got any questions about that? Moses, you got any questions about that, homie? Let me know if you do. All right. Give me 1 second here. All right. I want to kind of show you all what I mean by when I talked about Israel or Jacob being able to hide or blend in with the darker tribes. Okay. This right here is in Exodus. Okay. Exodus 2. And this is Moses. You can look into this later. Okay. But I believe that, yeah, this should be Moses. When Moses had to flee Egypt because he killed a man, he was running around in the land. And this is what they said about Moses. Exodus 2:19. You can read Exodus chapter 2 to get better context. But here's the point. We'll start at 2:18. So long story short, Moses helped out some people. He helped some females or women water their flock. He gave the sheep and goats water, okay, as he fled from Egypt. And when they got home, their father Ruel, he said, "How is it that ye are come so soon today?" Basically, they got home sooner than expected, okay. And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds." So Moses was compared to an Egyptian right here, dark skin. Don't look at these Egyptians today and think these are the people that were responsible for the pyramids. Listen, Egypt got conquered by several nations well after the fall of Rome. Okay. Most recently, they were conquered by Islam in the 7th century. That's why you see those quote unquote Arabs or whatever you want to call them, people running around there today saying they're the Egyptians. They're not the original Egyptians. Egypt is a dark land. All right. So I just want to prove here that even Moses, who was an Israelite, who was a son of Jacob, he was compared to an Egyptian. Okay, you got a question here or a comment? Let me read that real quick for you, Moses. Why don't they share the truth and call out the people in Israel? Who are they? Ayatollah look kind of like too. Yeah. I don't know who those people are, man, in these positions. You got to understand, man, this is a world conspiracy. This is a world conspiracy. You're going to see here, and I'm going to read it here in the Bible. This is a conspiracy through a lot of world leaders. A lot of these world leaders have joined hands with Esau to suppress Jacob because of their greed, because of their disbelief. Okay. There was several times throughout history where Jacob was the leader of the world and the world was at peace. But some kind of way Esau would promise these people things and whatnot, and they conspired to take down Jacob. So that Ayatollah, here's one thing about, Iran in general that we'll talk about. Iran is not a naturally Islamic country. Islam conquered Iran, or what you call Persia today as well. They conquered them around the 7th, 8th century. Okay. So Islam is a tool used by many would consider the Vatican uses it as a tool, and Judaism uses it as a tool. So those people in Persia are being conquered in several ways. They're being conquered by Islam, and we don't know who these clerics are. They may be Edomites. We don't know. Okay. And I will tell you this though. There have been people from that side of the world make comments. One of the Egyptian presidents, this is back in like the 70s or 80s, or this is around the time that the 1948 Israel was established in that part of the world. And we might be able to look that up here before it's not too long. He made a comment. He said, the Israelites left black and they came back white. He said that. I can't think of his name right now. If you Google that type of thing, where Egyptian president says the Israelites left black and came back white, there have been voices that say this stuff. Okay. But keep in mind, what we hear and see over here is very controlled. This whole idea of America being the land of the free and information, man, we're probably more shut down than North Korea. All of our stuff is controlled. It has to be. All right. And here's the problem. A lot of these elites, okay, especially some of these white European elites that took the deal with Esau to take down Jacob, they sold their people down the road. You got white people saying stuff like, well, I'm not going to get into that right now, but they're really putting quote unquote white people in a bad spot. They're putting some of these African tribes in a bad spot because they lied to their people too. Everyone's being lied to. Everyone's being lied to. I would grade people in this time and day on whether they're telling the truth or not. That's the measuring stick. That's why I talk with this ruler right here. That's the measuring stick, truth. You're either on the side of truth or you're on the side of a lie. Okay. But there's people out there that know, but those voices get suppressed. All right. They get suppressed heavily. So I kind of want to go to that scripture there to kind of show you how Moses was confused as an Egyptian. All right. Let's look here in the New Testament where Joseph, when Mary was pregnant with Jesus, this is what the angel told Joseph. Check it out. The angel of the Lord. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So Jesus and his mother and father had to flee into Egypt. Why would pale-skinned people, I'm going to call them pale, fair-skinned people flee into Egypt? You stick out like a sore thumb. And when you look at this word Herod right here, you can look into this Herod. This is the guy who was the governor of Judea at that time. Him and all his people had took over Judea, the land of Judah. They took it all over. They were the priests. They were the Sadducees and the Pharisees. These were all Herod's people. And guess who Herod was? Of all people on earth, Herod was Esau. He was an Edomite. I'm going to show you. Let me just show you. We're going to click on this word Herod right here to get it more understanding. Here it is right here. I think I showed this before. Herod the Great is what they call him. They call him Herod the Great. All right. Let me show you what his quote unquote who he was a part of. It says the name of a royal family that flourished among the Jews in the times of Christ and the apostles. He was a son of Antipater of Idumea. When you see this word Idumea, this is the Greek way. This is the Greek variation of the word Edom. So if you're speaking the Greek language, you say Idumea. If you're speaking the Hebrew, it's Edomite. Same people. That's not a coincidence. Esau was always involved in the takedown of his brother Jacob. Esau would team up and pair up with these other kingdoms to conspire to take down Jacob. That's what Esau does. Whether it be with the Greeks, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Romans, and the new Romans today. That's their role. And I'm not going to front and say it's an important role, because typically, listen, when Jacob is living righteously, no one can touch him. No one can touch us. Our kryptonite is when we stop following God. So Esau was put on earth to be the sword. How would you ever know light if you never knew darkness? You feel me? How would you ever know light if you never knew darkness? So Esau has a role. Okay? But God despises him because he won't repent. He goes overboard with it. He takes it too far. All right? So let's see here. Still highlighting the differences between Jacob and Esau. Now, this is New Testament right here. Romans 9. Romans 9. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. So from a godly biblical perspective, God loves Jacob and he hates Esau. Now, does that mean we should hate Esau? No, don't hate Esau. And I'm going to show you where we're commanded not to hate Esau. This is in Deuteronomy. I'm going quick here, but y'all can always pause and go back and watch the video. This is Moses talking to the children of Israel. And he's telling us, do not, or thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother. He's also telling us, thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because thou was a stranger in his land. So we are not commanded to hate these people, but that don't mean we can't speak the truth. Do not hate them. God has a way of doing things. And like I showed y'all in the slideshow, if you notice how God's will was done with Jacob and Esau, God's will was done in that whole moment. Even though they were each acting independently somewhat of each other, God's will was done in that moment. We don't have to bring hate. We bring love, which is the truth, which is God. And God take care of the rest. Okay? God take care of the rest. So don't hate these people. They want you to hate them. It fuels them. Now here's Malachi 1:4. I want to show you this right here, where I talked about the rainbow. I want to get into that rainbow analogy again to show you what I mean by that. So here's Malachi 1:4. This is talking about Edom or Esau. Now Edom/Esau has several different titles, just like Israel does. We're known as Jacob. We're known as Yeshruel, I think. We're known as the children of Israel. We're known by different Zion. Okay, there's different names that equate to, the children of Israel or Jacob. The same thing with Esau. He's known as also Mount Seir. I believe it's Seir. If you ever see Mount Seir, it's talking about Edom or Esau. Okay. Like I said before, I showed you Idumea in the Greek. If you ever see Idumea, that's also talking about Edom. All right. But listen what he says here. We just read this in the New Testament. This is Malachi 1:2. I have loved you, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Watch this. This is Malachi 1:4. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. And check this out. And they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord hath indignation forever. That means the Lord will always be against them because of their ways. Okay. Now here's how I describe God's hate. Okay. This is how I would best describe God's hate to to my son, to my child, to anyone. This is how I would describe God's hate. I'm going to describe God's love and then God's hate. God's love would be to take a seed and you go find good ground, right? Good soil. And you plant that seed in the soil and you water it. And before you know it, it blossoms into fruit. That's love. That's God's love. The way God shows hate is that if I take that same seed and say, I'm going to go into the middle of the street and I'm going to plant this seed in the concrete or stick it on the concrete, it's not going to grow. That means God hates that way. It doesn't work. God hates that way. God hates the way of putting a seed on concrete, trying to make it grow into fruit. He hates it because he don't work with it that way. Does that make sense? God's love is following the way and the path that he already laid out for us. There's a way to grow fruit. There's a way to make children. There's a way to deal with your brother. Then there's another way that God hates that causes destruction, where it causes a lack of life. If you try to put that seed on concrete, there's no life going to come from that. That means God hates that way. I hope that makes sense. But keep in mind here, look, it says Esau is the border of wickedness. And like I showed y'all, let me go to it here. We talked about the rainbow. Let me get to it 1 second. That border of wickedness. Y'all see that? He's the border of wickedness. That red represents Esau. You can't get past that. And I'm using this rainbow, like I said, to show you the dynamic differences in these two brothers. All right. Esau will represent the red outer ring, and Jacob represents the beautiful violet that bends more to light, which is the truth, which is God, and it has more energy. Okay. Now I'm going to show you where Jacob is how he's used in the rainbow analogy. Okay, I'm gonna read it here. Let me get to the right screen so you guys can see me first. All right, so right now we're in Deuteronomy 32 and 8 here, and watch what God says here. This is what Moses says about Israel, about the Israelites. Okay, he says. First, I'm going to read 32 and 7 because it's beautiful. He says, remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee. Thy elders, and they will tell thee. Check it out. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. And just like I showed you here, look at that inner ring. That's the bounds going down. That's our role. Let me see what you're saying. It makes sense. Yeah, man. You said like Trump said, yeah, but Trump, man, I think Trump is working with he don't seem like he's doing right, man. He seems like he's causing a problem. We'll see though. I don't want to make I don't want to rush to judgment on Trump and whatnot, but Trump seemed like he made a deal already with the other side, man. We can get into that maybe another time. Is this whole Iran thing? Excuse me, this whole Iran thing. I don't trust none of it because I understand what we in. Okay? They do not want Jacob to wake up. You don't understand the level of violation that has taken place in this world. I can't even express to you guys with words the level of God's wrath that's going to come upon these people and what they did to us. You have no clue. And the thing about it, there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. The world, do you know how many abortions that have happened in America alone with just amongst his people? I'm hearing 50 million. You don't think God feels that? And for anybody that would argue to me that there's no God or something silly like that, you can't even account for how you got here. Nobody picked their parents. Nobody picked what state, what city, what country they were going to be born in, what day they were going to be born, what your skin tone was going to be, how tall you were going to grow to, when your hair was going to turn gray. None of that. That's the power that these people are up against. And they know it. They do rituals, guys. They literally do rituals to do anything they can to keep us cut off from the signal from who we are. It's more important than what people are giving it. Now, I'm not saying that to make anybody afraid. Like I said, we're not walking in the spirit of hate, but they've committed a serious crime. Serious crime. And God knew they were going to do it. He gave them that leash and they abused it. Now, if you read the book of Obadiah, it talks all about what's going to happen to Edom. All what's going to happen to Edom. We'll go to 1 and 10 right here just to show you. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Now imagine, here, I want you to think about this. You can read the book of Obadiah on your own, and I encourage everyone to do it. Imagine if you know you're Edom, if you know you're Esau, you know you descend from Edom, and you read this kind of stuff about what's going to happen to you. What would you do? Oh, my fault. Let me pull it up. My bad. I got you. Yeah, here it goes. If you read this about yourself, what would you do? I mean, how would you take that information? So when you see these people acting all erratic and, they'll tell you one thing one day and their words don't make sense and they're lying about this, lying about that, man, they have nothing to lose. They feel like they have nothing to lose. God has already spoke against these people and what they've done. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. When you hear these terms in the news about people saying stuff like, does Israel have a right to exist, when they're talking about the Jewish state? You know why they're saying that? Because they know this is their dang on judgment, guys. And I'm not saying that as a man. I'm saying that from me having that forensic evidence, that UV vision that God gave me, that ultralight vision, that forensic evidence that they are guilty of a crime. So when they say, does Israel have a right to exist? That statement within itself is an indictment. Because if you know that you're the children of Israel and the children of Jacob, you know that God got your back. The scriptures tell you that up and down through the scriptures, that he gonna save you, that God got it. So why are you running around here acting like God is out to kill you? It's clear who's who. Read this one of these days, Obadiah, and think to yourself, oh Lord, what if I was Edom? It's not a good outlook for these people. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. And he says certain things right here. This is Obadiah 1 and 5. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? Basically, he's saying this man, dude, he won't stop. Normally, somebody break into your apartment or whatever, they ain't gonna take every damn thing. They might leave the couch or something, leave something. These cats come take the pots, the pans, the TV, the socks, the underwear, the table, the couch, everything. They won't leave nothing. That's what that means. And it doesn't appear like they're ever going to repent, yo. They're going to pass laws to say you can't talk about this, talk about that. They're going to cut off your banking, okay? Get you fired from your job, label you something, whatever the case may be, okay? Think about the world we live in today, guys. They created a nuclear bomb before they told black people who they are. They created nuclear bombs before they have disclosed to you truthfully who these so-called black Americans and black people are. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, man. All right. So those are the difference between Jacob and Esau, guys. Two different people, two different destinies. However, we do not hate them. We love our brother. I love my brother. And I pray for my brother, just like my father did, Jacob. He loved Esau. He was afraid of Esau, but we're not afraid. We only fear God. You know what I'm saying? We only fear God. And we're going to continue to walk in righteousness to the best of our ability. Jezebel don't even stand a chance, like my homie Ye said. Trying to think, is there anything else in here I want to get to? I also want to talk about one more thing. Let me find that real quick. Give me a second. It tells you here in the Bible that Jacob would lose his identity. It tells you that he would lose his identity. Here it goes, Jeremiah 17:4. It tells you that, you know, that's going to happen to his people. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So don't get it twisted. Israel did wicked things. Israel, Jacob stopped following God. They went a different way. And because of that, we were punished for that. So there's nobody to blame but us and our actions. That's the key, the thing I want to drive home here. We don't blame anyone. We take responsibility for our wickedness and we repent and follow that narrow and righteous path that God gave us. And then from there, these things will be reversed. And we can bring peace to the world and be that light to the Gentiles that we're commanded to be. All right. So with that being said, I think I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna wait about 10 seconds. Anybody got any questions, want to add anything, let me know. All righty. All right, I guess we're good here. Anybody has any questions, whatever, feel free to leave them in the comments after the stream ends. And I'll do my best to get to those. So with that being said, like I said, let me finish off on my rainbow here because I like my rainbow. I like my rainbow. That rainbow back up. We're going to get out of here. All right. And with that being said,